In 1865, Japan was a fragmented agrarian society, largely unknown to the Western world. Ruled not by its emperor, but by a military government, it clung tightly to feudal traditions, rituals, and hierarchies that had endured for centuries. Just 40 years later, it had defeated two global empires, built a world-class navy, and emerged as the first Asian nation recognized as an equal by the West. How did this extraordinary metamorphosis take place? And more than that, what did it feel like to live through it? To watch the sun rise on a new Japan, while the old one crumbled beneath your feet. Today we journey through memoirs, letters, and journals, from samurai to students, sailors to statesmen, to hear the story of Japan's rise through the voices of those who lived it. First chapter: the end of isolation. Japan, under the Tokugawa shogunate, enjoyed over 2 centuries of internal peace and strict isolation. Foreign missionaries were expelled, Christianity was outlawed, and travel abroad was forbidden under penalty of death. A tightly regulated system of class and duty governed every facet of life. Merchants were looked down upon. Farmers were idealized. Samurai, though often poor, were held in honor as the defenders of tradition. But that delicate balance could not endure forever. In 1853, the world arrived on Japan's shores with smoke and steel. Commodore Matthew Perry of the United States Navy entered Edo Bay with 4 black ships. They came with cannons and letters. The message was clear: open your ports to American trade, or we will open them for you. The Japanese called it the Kurofune shock, a realization that the world beyond their shores had grown far more powerful than they had imagined. From Japanese Observer, 1854. The foreigners came not as guests, but as a tempest. Their ships belched smoke, their language was noise, their eyes missed nothing. I felt as if we were being judged by a ghost from a future we did not yet believe in. The Tokugawa government signed the Treaty of Kanagawa under duress, opening 2 ports to US ships. In the following years, similar treaties with Britain, Russia, France, and the Netherlands followed, each more unequal than the last. These were known as the Ansei Treaties, and they sparked a crisis of legitimacy. The shogunate had protected Japan for 250 years, but now many questioned whether it could protect Japan at all. Reading the Diary of Samurai from Choshu, year 1858. If our swords cannot defend the nation, then we must forge new weapons. We cannot stand in the tide and demand it recede. The world is changing, and we must change with it. By the 1860s, Japan was no longer just isolated. It was anxious, divided, and ready for upheaval. Second chapter: collapse and rebirth. The Meiji Restoration. The chaos of foreign encroachment ignited civil unrest. Samurai from the southwestern domains, Satsuma, Choshu, Tosa, formed alliances and began calling for the restoration of imperial rule. They accused the shogunate of cowardice and betrayal. In 1867, Tokugawa Yoshinobu resigned his post as shogun, but the gesture was not enough. War followed. The Boshin War pitted imperial loyalists against shogunate forces. Battles raged from Kyoto to Tohoku, culminating in the siege of Hakodate in 1869. Reading from an imperial soldier, 1869. When we marched through Edo, the people did not cheer. They watched in silence. Some wept. The city of the shoguns had fallen, and with it, the world of our fathers. With the Meiji Restoration, real power returned to the imperial throne. at least in name. In practice, it was visionary oligarchs, statesmen like Okubo Toshimichi, Kido Takayoshi, and Saigo Takamori, who restructured Japan from the top down. The domains were abolished, prefectures were established, daimyos were compensated and stripped of power. A new conscript army replaced the samurai. Reading: Former Samurai Turned Bureaucrat, 1871. We had been warriors. Now we are clerks, teachers, and engineers. I miss the weight of my sword, but I see in my son's eyes something new, ambition unbound by rank. Education was reimagined. Literacy soared. A ministry of industry drove the creation of railways, telegraphs, and factories. Japan had entered the modern age by force of will. Third chapter: Building a Modern Empire. The 1870s and 80s were years of fervent learning and imitation. The Iwakura Mission, Japan's diplomatic tour of the West, visited 12 countries in 18 months, absorbing ideas in law, technology, and society. The mission returned with one clear conclusion: modernization was survival. A piece from Iwakura Mission Journal, year 1873. We saw steam locomotives that crossed whole countries, newspapers that reached millions, and hospitals where the poor were healed for free. If we do not become like them, they will make us into them. Japan hired foreign experts, yatoi, to advise in everything from shipbuilding to philosophy. Students studied abroad. Tokyo University became a symbol of national ambition. Industrialization took root. Silk and cotton mills, shipyards, coal mines, and steel works sprang up. By the 1880s, Japan was the most industrialized country in Asia. From a factory foreman, Osaka, our looms never sleep. We work by gaslight. The girls sing while they weave. This is not the world of our fathers, but perhaps it is the future of our children. In 1889, the Meiji Constitution was promulgated, modeled in part after the German system. It enshrined the emperor as sovereign, yet introduced an elected lower house. Though suffrage was limited, the seeds of participatory government were sown. Fourth chapter: Trial by War. Victory over China. By the 1890s, Japan had built not just a new society, but a new army and navy. Its leaders turned outward, toward Korea, long a vassal state of China. The First Sino-Japanese War broke out in 1894 after mounting tensions over influence in Korea. It was Japan's first major military test, and it passed with shocking speed. Source from a Japanese infantryman: "We moved as one, drilled and ready. The Chinese troops were brave but disorganized. At night I could hear their drums across the river. When the firing stopped, the silence was worse." Victory was swift and complete. In 1895, the Treaty of Shimonoseki gave Japan its first colonial possession, Taiwan, and recognized its new power. But the triumph was short-lived. Within weeks, Russia, France, and Germany forced Japan to surrender part of its gains. The triple intervention enraged the public. Year 1895, Japanese Foreign Minister says, "They smiled and congratulated us on our victory, then stripped us of its reward. The West does not fear our rise yet, but they will." Fifth chapter: Fire in the East. War with Russia. By 1904, another showdown loomed, this time with Russia. The conflict centered on Manchuria and Korea. Japan launched a surprise attack on Port Arthur, beginning the Russo-Japanese War. The war stunned the world. For the first time, an Asian power defeated a European empire in a modern war. from Japanese naval officer that was in war. At Tsushima, we waited. The Russian fleet was tired, slow. We were fast, precise. When the battle was over, the sea was silent but for wreckage. We had done the impossible. The victory at Tsushima was decisive. It electrified Asia and shocked Europe. In Tokyo, children sang songs of victory. In India, Sun Yat-sen and Gandhi took note. London newspaper on the war. The Japanese have changed the world. No longer can Europe look east and see only shadows. They see a mirror, and perhaps their own future. Reflection on Japan, a nation transformed. In 4 decades, Japan had transformed itself, feudal to industrial, isolated to imperial. And yet, the transformation was not only material, it was psychological. People no longer looked inward. They looked to Tokyo, to Europe, to the future. Some Tokyo civilian in the year 1905 writes in his diary, "We are no longer what we were." I walk through Tokyo and hear English words, see steel towers. My children wear school uniforms, not kimono. I wonder what the emperor sees from his palace gates. Is this what he dreamed when he was a boy? The conclusion: history is not a march, it is a storm. And in the eye of the Meiji storm stood countless lives, farmers and fighters, scholars and sailors, witnessing the rebirth of their world. These are their voices, these are their memories, and they remind us that even the greatest transformations begin with uncertain steps. If you enjoyed this journey into Japan's past, consider subscribing to Beyond the Ages. History lives in the stories we choose to remember.